Ashlynn, wake up.
Yeah. Straight crook. We built this from the dirt. Straight crooked. We built this from the dirt. Straight crooked.
Welcome back to The Deep Dive. We are so glad you're here with us today because we are tackling a story that, well, it feels almost like a modern parable.
It really does. It's a situation I think a lot of people can, recognize on some level.
Absolutely. We are looking at this gravitational pull of chaos versus the quiet, and let's be honest, sometimes boring safety of stability.
Mm-hmm.
It involves a woman named Ashlynn, the man she's currently with, Eric, and the man she left behind, Jimmie.
It is a classic setup, but the details here are just staggering. And when you say we are unpacking it, we aren't just speculating. We're not just going on gossip here.
Not at all.
We're working from a file that is absolutely overflowing with source material.
It is a massive sack. I mean, just to give you, the listener, a sense of the weight of this deep dive, what exactly are we looking at today?
Okay, so we're looking at decades of court records from multiple counties in Indiana, Tippecanoe, Fountain, Carroll counties, which give us the hard, cold legal reality.
Right, the black and white.
Exactly. But then on top of that, we have the Indiana incarcerated database logs, which give us this clear timeline of incarceration. And then to color all of that in, we have these deeply personal handwritten letters.
They're tough to read sometimes.
They really are. And we have internal notes about behavior inside the community corrections system. So you have the cold, hard facts of the law mixed right in with the messy, hot emotions of a breakup and a new fling.
It's data points meeting heartbreak, really. And the mission for today is to answer a specific set of questions that, that our listeners have raised and that the data itself just screams out for.
Mm-hmm.
We need to figure out, how serious can this relationship between Ashlynn and Eric actually get, realistically, given all the baggage they're both carrying?
That's the big one.
Then what are the odds that Ashlynn is going to look back at Jimmie, the man she, for lack of a better word, discarded with massive regret? And then I think the darkest question of all. What happens when the volatile reality of Eric's fidelity, or lack thereof, finally comes to light?
It's essentially a risk assessment, isn't it? We're comparing two very different timelines, two potential futures.
Exactly. You have the timeline Ashlynn chose to leave, and then you have the timeline she is currently sprinting down.
And on one side, you had Jimmie, who, as we're going to see, offered a very specific kind of stability and fun. And on the other side, you have Eric. And Eric isn't just a bad boy in some romantic movie sense.
No, this is not a rom-com.
Not at all. We are talking about a man with a 30-year documented history of theft, substance abuse, and domestic volatility.
30 years. I mean, you said it. That is a career. That is a lifetime of established patterns.
It is. It's not an anomaly. It's a lifestyle. It's who he is.
But before we dive into the deep end of Eric's criminal history, we actually need to do a bit of a rewind. We need to make a correction, or maybe a clarification, from a previous discussion. It's about a woman named Madison.
Right.
This came up in the feedback we got, and looking at the source material again, it is absolutely crucial that we get this power dynamic right.
Absolutely. This is vital because it really sets the stage for how we understand control and boundaries in these relationships. In a previous deep dive, there was a suggestion that Jimmie was the one telling Ashlynn to stay away from Madison.
That he was the one laying down the law, so to speak.
Exactly. But the source material, specifically the text logs and the notes we have, clarifies that we had that completely backward.
So hold on. It wasn't Jimmie being the controlling boyfriend.
No, it was Ashlynn. Ashlynn was the one who told Jimmie he needed to stay away from Madison.
Okay, let's unpack that. Why? What was the trigger there? What was the reasoning?
Well, it seems to stem from insecurity, or at least a boundary violation. Apparently, Madison had told Jimmie that she loved him. Now, obviously, if you're Ashlynn, that is a huge red flag. You hear that, and she wasn't having it. She went to Jimmie and said, "I am not comfortable with this person being in your life," and she set a hard boundary.
Which, to be fair, is a pretty reasonable boundary in a monogamous relationship, right? If someone is professing love to your partner, asking for distance is. That's standard procedure.
I agree completely. It's a healthy protective measure for the relationship. But here is the data point that matters most. Jimmie's reaction.
Right. What does he do?
Jimmie listened. He respected the boundary. He seemingly understood that to make Ashlynn feel safe,
Right.
to make their relationship secure, he needed to distance himself from Madison. He honored her no.
So he proved that he was prioritizing her comfort, her security, over that friendship. He put the relationship first.
Exactly. But here is where the contrast comes in, and this is where the whole dynamic just gets messy and, frankly, kind of infuriating to read.
Okay.
Later on, the tables turned. Jimmie then asked Ashlynn to distance herself from 3 specific individuals. A guy named Jeff, someone they nicknamed Lab Coat, and a man named Stephen Fisher.
Lab coat.
Yeah.
That is a nickname that just raises questions all by itself, but yeah, we can put a pin in that for now. Why did Jimmie want her to stay away from them?
He felt they were a threat to the relationship. He perceived them as risks, either to her sobriety, her safety, or, their fidelity. So he asked for the exact same courtesy she had already asked of him.
And since she had already set that precedent with Madison, and he'd complied, you would assume the social contract of the relationship would mean she'd reciprocate.
You would assume that's what a partnership looks like. But the notes show she flat out rejected the request.
She said no.
She explicitly stated that Jimmie couldn't tell her who to be friends with.
Wow. That is a fascinating and really telling double standard. You can't see the person who threatens me, but I can see the people who threaten you.
It shows a fundamental lack of equity. It's a total imbalance. Jimmie was operating on a we basis. He was trying to protect the unit, the relationship. Ashlynn was operating on a me basis, protecting her own autonomy while actively restricting his.
That sets the stage for everything else we're going to discuss about respect and control, doesn't it?
It really does. It wasn't that Jimmie was controlling. It was that he was trying to establish parity, to have the same rules apply to both of them. And he got completely shut down.
And that context, it really changes how we view the breakup. It wasn't necessarily an escape from control. It might have been an escape from accountability.
That's a great way to put it.
So let's move into the first major section of our analysis. We're calling this the throwaway. This is about what Ashlynn actually walked away from. Because there's often this narrative, right, used to justify leaving a stable partner that they were boring or stiff.
Oh yeah, the old cliche, nice guys finish last because they're boring. That's the trope.
But when you look at the source notes, which are literally titled, Jimmie was far from boring, that entire narrative just dissolves. It just doesn't hold water.
It really doesn't. When you actually look at the activity log, at what they did together, Jimmie was actively trying to create a life full of experiences for her. He wasn't just sitting at home watching paint dry.
Not at all.
We have records of him taking her to her first casino. That's an adrenaline experience. That's exciting.
And then there's the date that really stands out to me in the files. July 4th, 2024.
Right. Independence Day. He took her to her first cannabis dispensary visit.
That is a very specific kind of memory to create with someone. It's novel, it's a little bit edgy, it's a shared first.
Exactly. He was facilitating new experiences, he was pushing the boat out. And it wasn't just local stuff either. The records show he was funding trips.
Like what?
A casino outside of Chicago, booking a room specifically with a hot tub, a whole trip to Madison County. He was investing his time and his money into leisure and pleasure for them. But the thing that really strikes me, and I think this is where you see the difference between just spending money on someone and actually caring about them, is the detail about the bin sales.
Yes, the bin sales. I love this detail in the notes. For listeners who might not know, you should probably explain what a bin sale is.
All right. So these are overstock stores where, like, Amazon returns or surplus goods get sold in these giant chaotic bins. You literally have to dig through them. It's like a treasure hunt.
It sounds kind of stressful to me, honestly.
It's dusty, it's competitive, it's totally random. To a lot of people, yeah, that sounds like a nightmare. But to Ashlynn, she loved them.
She loved the chaos of.
Yes. And the notes say Jimmie took her there specifically because he knew she loved them. He knew that digging through those bins gave her a dopamine hit, that it was her kind of fun.
You see, that hits differently for me than the hot tub. Anyone can book a nice hotel room. That's generic romance 101.
Yeah.
Taking someone to a chaotic bin store because they love it, that means you are studying the person. You're paying attention.
You know what makes them tick? It implies a really high level of what psychologists call regard. He wasn't trying to impress her with his tastes. He was actively facilitating hers. That requires paying attention. That is intimacy.
He was saying, I see you, and I want you to have the specific kind of fun that you enjoy. So she leaves the guy who knows her specific hobbies and takes her on vacations.
It's a comparative analysis. We're looking at two men, Jimmie and Eric, but, and this is key, we're stripping away the drama to look strictly at their resumes.
I mean, what skills do they actually bring to the table? Constructive or, destructive?
Exactly. We've got military records, court documents, personal letters, the whole file.
It's a fascinating study in contrasts, really. If you think about their lives as a set of tools, the question is, who has the toolkit for stability and who has the one for chaos?
So let's start with Jimmie. The text source is pretty clear. This isn't just a guy who held a job. He served in the U.S. Army as an MOS 19E10.
Which, in plain English, means he was an armored crewman inside an M60A3 main battle tank.
Right. I mean, think about the psychology required just for that.
Absolutely.
Or later, when he picks up his trade as a welder, fluent in all processes. That takes extreme precision, patience. You have to follow a code. It tells me he's wired for structure.
And he wasn't just filling a seat in the Army. The records show he graduated, top 5 in his battalion?
Top 5.
His orders for Germany were actually pulled specifically so he could attend the instructional teaching course, the ITC. So his core skill isn't just doing, it's teaching.
So he's not just a soldier, he's a trainer.
Exactly. He taught hand-to-hand combat, he was an expert marksman, he is, by trade, a protector.
And that builder mindset, it seems to bleed right into his emotional intelligence. He talks about it in his letters, how he's a processor. He doesn't just react.
Right, he analyzes. He's described as a type A alpha male, a lifelong leader, but look at how he applies that. He engages in hosting.
So Jimmie uses his skills to build walls, to create safety. Eric, on the other hand, he seems to use his skills to slip through them.
It's a total inversion.
Let's get into his outlaw skill set.
The sources are very clear on this. There is no evidence of any formal vocational training for Eric.
You don't get multiple meth charges without learning a trade.
Exactly. The criminal profile infers he's trained in the chemistry of making drugs.
So Jimmie welds metal, Eric cooks meth. And where Jimmie has military discipline, Eric has what we could call criminal mechanics.
A proficiency in auto theft, burglary, conspiracy. But what's really fascinating is his skill in navigating the legal system. He files his own pro se motions.
So he's basically acting as his own lawyer from a jail cell.
Precisely. He understands the system, but he learned it from the defendant's table. And when you apply that same volatility to relationships, you don't get a hosting.
You get a trauma bond. On one side, Jimmie brings safety, welding, teaching, and processing.
And on the other, Eric brings volatility, illicit chemistry, theft, and legal maneuvering.
One toolkit is designed to build and protect.
And the other is designed to exploit and survive. We have to talk about the financial aspect of this, because in this whole stack of documents, money is like a recurring character. It tells a story all by itself.
It really does. And that story starts with the letters, specifically the file Ashlynn xmas.pdf and the mail from around December 2025. These are heavy reads.
Heavy in what way?
Because you see the cost of his devotion in black and white. Jimmie explicitly details paying over $400 toward her fees.
And just so we're clear, for our listeners who might not be familiar with the justice system, that $400 isn't just an arbitrary bill, right?
No, not at all. In community corrections or on probation, those fees are the keys to the castle. You don't pay your fees, you don't get passes, you don't get movement, you are stuck.
So Jimmie was literally buying her freedom of movement so they could see each other.
He was, but he notes very vulnerably in the letter, I went without things I needed so you could get those fees handled.
I went without things I needed. I mean, that is the definition of sacrifice. He is actively degrading his own quality of life to upgrade hers.
And he frames it in a way that is just heartbreaking in hindsight. He writes about wanting to offer a relationship that was free of name-calling, intimidation, or abuse. He was seemingly very aware of her history.
Yeah.
He even mentions trying to help her break trauma bonds, and he specifically identifies a cycle she had with this Jeff character we mentioned earlier. He was positioning himself as the safe harbor.
The off-ramp from the chaos.
Yes. He was trying to show her, look, love doesn't have to hurt. Love can just be paying your fees and going to a bin sale.
And how is that safety, that sacrifice rewarded? The timeline here is just brutal.
It's so cold. The documents indicate that Ashlynn cut communication immediately. I mean, immediately after Jimmie paid those fees.
That is, wow. That feels purely transactional. Like the transaction cleared, so the account was closed.
It forces Jimmie to ask a question in his letter that I think just haunts this entire file. He asks, "Did you truly love me? Or were the things you said based on what I was doing for you?"
Ugh, it's the worst feeling in the world, isn't it? Realizing you weren't a partner, you were a utility. You were an ATM that gave hugs.
And this brings us right back to your question about regret. You asked, what are the odds, Ashlynn looks back? I'd say they are incredibly high.
Why?
Because right now, she is likely in that new relationship energy phase with Eric. Everything is exciting, the chaos feels like passion, the drama feels like importance, but that energy has a shelf life.
It always burns off. You can't live on adrenaline forever.
It always does. And when it fades, you're left with the day-to-day reality of the person sleeping next to you. And when she's sitting there, likely dealing with financial stress or emotional volatility with Eric, the memory of a man who funded trips to Chicago, who respected her, no, who went hungry so she could pay her fees, that absence is going to be loud.
It's going to be a ghost in the room.
Yeah. A huge one. Jimmie offered unconditional stability. That is a very, very rare commodity, and usually people don't realize its value until they're standing in the rain without an umbrella.
Especially when the new umbrella is full of holes. So let's pivot. Let's talk about the new umbrella. Let's talk about the man she chose. Let's profile Eric Lacy. Because if Jimmie is the safe harbor, Eric is. Well, what is he?
Eric is the hurricane. We have a document here titled Criminal Profile and a whole series of PDFs labeled Eric 1 through Eric 18. This isn't just a rap sheet, it's an autobiography written in bad decisions.
Let's start with the basics, the demographics. Who is this guy?
Okay, so he was born in November 1973. The records suggest Ashlynn is younger, so there is a significant age gap there. But the age itself isn't really the issue, it's what he's done with all those years. We're looking at a recidivism timeline that spans from 1991 all the way to the present.
That's over 30 years. That is basically his entire adult life spent in and out of the system.
It is. And it's a pattern of escalation and variety. In the early 90s, 1991, 1992, you see the entry-level stuff. Theft, receiving stolen property. Okay, he's taking things that aren't his.
Standard stuff for a young person getting into trouble.
Right. But then, as we hit the 2000s, the nature of the crimes shifts. It gets more serious.
Yeah.
In 2000, we see residential entry and burglary.
Which is a huge step up. It's a violation of personal space. It's crossing a physical boundary into someone's sanctuary, their home.
Exactly. And he hits that same note again in 2013 and 2014. But then, running parallel to the theft and burglary, you have the substance track, methamphetamine dealing, possession of chemical precursors.
Chemical precursors. That's a very clinical, legal way of saying he was cooking meth.
He was manufacturing. He wasn't just a user. He was part of the supply chain. He had the ingredients to make the product. This was in 2013 and 2014. And mixed in with all of that, we also see a charge for non-support of a dependent child in 2005.
So just to recap the pattern here. He steals property, he breaks into homes, he cooks meth, and he doesn't support his own kids. It's a full spectrum of irresponsibility.
It paints a picture of someone who struggles with any form of obligation. Legal obligation, financial obligation, familial obligation. It seems he rejects them all.
And speaking of financial obligation, we talked about Jimmie sacrificing $400. What does Eric's balance sheet look like? Because money is so often the #1 stressor in a relationship.
It is the complete and total opposite of Jimmie. Eric is not a provider, he is a financial black hole. The balance due in his court records it's staggering. He owes over $14,833 in restitution and fees.
Nearly 15 grand. That is a crushing, life-altering amount of debt for someone coming out of the system.
And you have to look at who he owes it to. He owes victims, individuals with names like Richard Snyder, Nancy Ballou, real people he took from. But he also owes restitution to the Indiana State Police Meth Suppression Section.
Wait, pause there. The meth suppression section. What does that mean?
Yeah. So when the police bust a meth lab, it's basically a toxic waste site. You need hazmat suits, special disposal units, chemical neutralization. It's incredibly expensive to clean that mess up.
Oh.
In Indiana, if you get convicted for that, they literally bill you for the cleanup of your own crime scene.
That is incredible. So he is literally in debt for the cost of cleaning up his own toxic mess.
It's a powerful metaphor for the relationship, isn't it? But here is the real kicker, found deep in the notes regarding his payments toward this massive debt. Eric has paid not 1 cent.
Zero.
So just compare the two realities Ashlynn is choosing between. Jimmie goes without things he needs to pay Ashlynn's debts. Eric brings nearly $15,000 of his own debt to the relationship and just ignores it completely.
So if Ashlynn is looking for any kind of stable future, she has hitched her wagon to an anchor. That debt doesn't just go away. It leads to garnished wages, it blocks credit, it follows you everywhere.
And remember Jimmie's letter. He warned her about cycles built on emotional extremes. He warned her about these trauma bonds. Eric is the walking, talking definition of that cycle. Jimmie was trying to break the cycle. Eric is the cycle.
It's almost like she's more comfortable in the chaos because it's familiar. Jimmie's peace, his stability, might have actually felt alien and unsettling to her.
That's a very common psychological pattern we see. If your baseline is chaos, peace feels like boredom. Peace can even feel like anxiety because you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. With Eric, the shoe is always dropping, so at least you know where you stand.
You know you're in a mess.
Yeah, it's a predictable mess.
Okay, so we've established that Eric is a financial liability and a career criminal. But now let's get to the listener's core question about the relationship itself. How serious can they actually get? Because right now, you can imagine she might think she can fix him. Maybe she thinks it's us against the world.
He is going through a breakup with a woman named Ashlynn. But he isn't just, eating ice cream and listening to sad music.
No, he is taking a very different approach.
He is trying to execute a strategic maneuver. He wants to know if he can use facts, specifically the criminal and financial facts of her new boyfriend, to snap her out of what he calls a trauma bond and ultimately win her back.
It's a fascinating case study. Essentially, Jimmie is trying to weaponize stability.
Weaponize stability, I like that. He has this belief that if he can just present the data clearly enough, that logic will somehow override everything else.
Override addiction, override trauma, override these deep-seated patterns. So the big question we're trying to answer is, can he do it? Can Jimmie successfully position himself to win her back by letting the hard truth do all the heavy lifting for him?
To put it another way, can he just wait out the chaos?
Right, because Jimmie's entire thesis, his whole bet, is that Ashlynn will eventually realize that her ex, Jeff Linder, and her current partner, Eric Lacy, are just bad for her.
He's betting everything on that one moment of clarity. So, let's set the scene. The core conflict here is, it's Jimmie versus the ghosts of Ashlynn's past and present. Jimmie believes he offered genuine love, genuine support, and crucially, he offered money. And he thinks she's now just pivoted to a new relationship with Eric Lacy.
A man Jimmie views as, completely detrimental to her well-being. And Jimmie isn't just guessing. He has compiled a literal criminal profile on Eric Lacy to prove his point. He even asks in his notes, and this is wild for a success rate prediction on an Eric-Ashlynn relationship.
Which is, that's an incredible thing to ask for, but based on the records we have, we are going to try to answer it.
We have to.
So the key question for this entire hour is this. By stepping back, by presenting the hard, cold legal truth, can Jimmie actually break Ashlynn's cycle? Can he position himself as the healthy choice? Let's get inside Jimmie's head. We have these letters. The files are labeled xmas.pdf and mail1212.5.pdf.
Right.
And reading these, the first thing that really strikes you is the tone.
It's very distinctive. It's disciplined. It's measured. Jimmie writes like someone who is trying very, very hard not to be reactive.
He even says it. He says, my instinct is not to react, but to think.
Yeah, he talks a lot about processing. He's trying so hard to be the adult in the room, to be the calm center of this storm.
But underneath that calm exterior, you can feel the sting. It's palpable. And there's a very specific grievance here that seems to be the flashpoint. It's about money.
There is. He details paying over $400 toward Ashlynn's fees.
And when you look at the other court documents we have, that $400 likely refers to work release fees, court costs?
Something like that, yes. He says he went without things that he needed so she could get those fees handled, so she could earn passes.
Passes, too, we assume, leave a facility or spend time with him. He notes that communication stopped immediately after the money was paid.
That's when the story turns. He writes, I was genuinely stunned.
But instead of just, getting angry and lashing out, he goes psychological. He starts trying to diagnose the situation.
This is where it gets fascinating, because Jimmie is analyzing Ashlynn's behavior through this very clinical lens. He believes he saw the pattern in himself.
Yeah.
So he issues an ultimatum.
But it's not your typical, come back to me or else kind of ultimatum. It's different.
It's a step-back ultimatum. It's a strategic pivot. He calls it choosing integrity over desperation.
Which is such a Jimmie thing to say.
It is. He decides to break his own attachment. He lays out 3 very clear questions for her.
1. Did you truly love me, or was it about what I did for you?
2. Was the promise to end old patterns true?
And 3. Are you trying to work this out or ending it?
And then he just steps back. He says, if you don't respond, I'll move forward quietly.
Is he really moving forward quietly? Because the entire rest of our source material for this deep dive suggests he went into full-on detective mode.
Well, that's the contradiction, isn't it? He tells her he's stepping back, and the strategy there is to let her feel the loss of his support. It's absolutely a positioning move. He wants her to feel the absence of that stability. But privately, he is digging up every piece of dirt he can find on the competition.
Which brings us to the competition. Let's talk about him. Segment 2, the rival. Enter Eric Dean Lacy.
We see repeated domestic battery convictions, not just once, repeatedly, a very clear one. We also see battery resulting in bodily injury, invasion of privacy. There is a protective order mentioned in the files involving a Wendy D. Lacy and multiple no-contact orders.
So this is a documented history of violence within relationships. This directly speaks to Jimmie's fear for Ashlynn's safety.
It's not just a theoretical risk. The data is right there. It all just suggests a lifestyle of profound instability. And that brings us to the financial aspect, which is something Jimmie is laser focused on.
Oh, this was the part that made my jaw drop. Jimmie didn't just look up his criminal record, he looked up his debts.
But here's where it gets really, really interesting. Jimmie's research didn't stop there.
Right. He found an asset.
Correct. He notes in his research that Eric owns a property in Kentucky and is valued at $77,000.
So he has this asset, but he hasn't paid his $14,000 in court fees and restitution.
And Jimmie sees an opening. His note here is incredible. He writes, I want to tie up his money so he can pay his fees.
That is strategic warfare. That's not just a breakup, that's a legal maneuver. His plan is to alert the court to Eric's assets, so the court forces Eric to pay up, which would theoretically drain Eric's resources.
So he can't fund Ashlynn.
Wow.
It's a very calculated move. Jimmie's theory is that Eric is currently paying for Ashlynn, giving her money and things, which makes Jimmie and his support irrelevant.
Yeah.
If Eric is suddenly broke, that seems to be the bet.
The big question Jimmie wanted us to answer, can he win? What is the success rate here?
If we look at Jimmie's position objectively, just based on the document.
And what about the Eric factor? What are the actual risks there based on the data? Jimmie wanted a prediction.
Well, the risks are massive.
Okay.
You don't even need a crystal ball. You just need to read his case files. The data shows Eric has a documented history of domestic battery. He has a pattern of recidivism, of reoffending almost immediately following release from prison.
Yeah.
And he owes over $14,000. The financial pressure alone is immense. And in criminal psychology, past behavior is the single best predictor of future behavior. Then Eric is not a long-term solution for her. He is highly likely to either reoffend, end up back in custody, or face complete financial ruin.
So the relationship is statistically very likely to be volatile and short-lived, which means Jimmie's wait-and-see strategy. His whole thing about, when you look back on this a year from now, will you feel proud?
It's a gamble, but it's a calculated one. He is literally banking on the Eric relationship collapsing under its own weight.
The weight of drug use, poverty, and violence. And he's done his homework. He has successfully identified that Eric Lacy is objectively an extremely high-risk partner. The data proves that beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Absolutely. The case against Eric is airtight.
That is the question, isn't it? And based on the court documents, the criminal history, and the behavioral patterns we've reviewed today, if Ashlynn stays on this path, the answer in 1 year is likely going to be a resounding no.
And this is the intel from inside the facility, correct?
Yeah, these are observational notes from people within the community corrections system. The note explicitly states that other females at Tippecanoe Community Corrections have admitted that Eric flirts with all the girls there whenever Ashlynn isn't around.
Whenever Ashlynn isn't around. That is the key phrase right there.
It suggests he's performing devotion for her benefit when she's watching, but practicing availability for everyone else the second she's gone.
And the notes, they go even deeper into the why of this behavior, don't they? It mentions something called the dealer mindset. Can we unpack that a little?
Yes, and this is a dark reality of the drug trade. The notes mention that dealers often use sex as currency.
As currency.
To pay for product, to collect on a debt, or just to gain leverage over people. It's transactional. Sex becomes a tool. Given Eric's long history with dealing and manufacturing meth, that transactional view of human connection is likely deeply ingrained in how he operates.
So fidelity isn't really a moral issue for him, it's just business. Or a resource to be used.
It could just be a resource. You use charm, you use sex to survive, to get favors, or just to pass the time. It is manipulative by its very design.
That's a terrifying thought for a romantic partner. You think you're in love, and for him, he's just closing deals.
And now look at the psychological profile suggested by the sources. Eric is described as being in his first relationship after getting out from prison. The notes then predict he will likely be insecure that Ashlynn is going to try to find another man.
So you have this toxic cocktail brewing here. Deep-seated insecurity plus a constantly wandering eye.
It's a complete paradox. He's terrified she will leave him, so he's probably jealous and wants to be controlling. But at the same time, he is flirting with every woman in sight to validate his own ego or just to keep his options open.
That is a recipe for absolute disaster. You cannot build a stable foundation on that kind of contradiction.
It's structurally impossible. It's a house built on sand. There is a very, very low ceiling for seriousness here. You can't get serious with someone who is auditioning your replacement every single time you leave the room.
So, the relationship is shaky at best. But this leads us to the most dangerous part of our deep dive, the fallout. Because eventually, Ashlynn is going to catch him.
It's inevitable. Small towns are small, and the corrections community is even smaller. Word gets around.
She's going to find out about the flirting at the community correction center. Or maybe she just decides she's had enough of the debt or the drama. What happens then when she confronts him?
This is where we have to stop looking at Eric as just a bad boyfriend and start looking at him as a potential physical threat. We have to look at his past to predict his reaction to conflict. When Eric Lacy is confronted or when he feels like he's losing control, does he de-escalate? Does he sit down and talk it out?
The records say no. Emphatically no.
The records say he escalates violently. We have multiple counts in his file, Eric15.pdf, Eric17.pdf of invasion of privacy and harassment. We have domestic battery charges in Eric10.pdf and Eric16.pdf. This is a man who reacts to rejection or conflict with obsession and violence.
Is there a specific case in the files that really highlights this pattern for us?
Yes, you have to look at the Wendy D. Lacy case from back in 1999 and 2000. The court ordered him to have no contact, but the order specifically said he was not to be in sight of the victim.
Wow, in sight of. That is very specific language. It's not just don't talk to her, it's stay out of her entire visual field.
Exactly. And did he?
I'm guessing no.
Of course not. He violated probation, warrants were issued, he couldn't let go, or he simply refused to accept the authority of the court and the autonomy of the woman. This goes right back to the boundary issue we started with.
Right.
Jimmie respected boundaries. Eric ignores court orders designed to protect the physical safety of women.
That is chilling.
Yeah.
And I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the residential entry charges from 2000-2001.
Residential entry is a legal euphemism for breaking in, but think about it physically in the context of a breakup. If Ashlynn tries to lock him out, if she says it's over and closes the door, history suggests he doesn't narc. He breaks the door down.
He forces access.
He forces access. And now you have to add the final terrifying ingredient to this volatile mixture. We know from her files ash1.pdf, ash2.pdf-2, and we know Eric has a long history of meth manufacturing.
So if they are using together, or if that substance is just present in the environment during a breakup?
Methamphetamine acts as a catalyst for aggression. It amplifies paranoia. It removes inhibition. If Ashlynn confronts Eric about the girls at the correction center, and if there are substances involved, the data suggests it will not just be an argument. It could become physically dangerous very quickly.
We are looking at a documented history of stalking, invasion of privacy, and domestic battery.
Right now, inside the system, there are constraints. There are guards. There are eyes on him. Once he is out, fully out, and that deep insecurity hits, and the financial pressure of that $14,000 debt becomes real, that is when the volatility will peak.
For a man who is legally, financially, and physically dangerous. We talked about Jimmie's letters earlier. There was one question he left her with that has just stuck with me. I want to read it again because I think it's the perfect frame for this entire situation.
Please do.
Ashlynn, I've taken some time before writing this because I didn't want to speak from emotion alone. I wanted to be honest, clear, and fair. To you, and to myself. For a long time, I believed what we shared was real. Not imagined, not temporary, but real in the sense that two people were building something meaningful, something that could grow once circumstances changed. I gave my support freely, emotionally, practically, and financially, because I believed we were moving forward together, not because I expected anything in return. That's why what's happened recently has been difficult to understand. The money I paid toward your fees wasn't easy for me. I went without things I needed so you could get those fees handled, earn passes, and so we could spend time together, continue building what we said we were building. I did that because I believed in us and in the promises you made to me. When communication stopped immediately after that, I was genuinely stunned. The timing forced me to step back and ask whether we were ever truly on the same page about what we were building. What's made this even harder is that this isn't new territory. Over the past year, there's been a pattern of starting and stopping instead of moving forward with clarity. While you were incarcerated, you promised me those patterns were behind us. You said that when you got out, you were choosing me, and that you wouldn't just walk away or end things without honesty. That promise mattered to me. I trusted it. So being cut off again without a real conversation has left me confused and hurt. It's made me question whether what's happening now reflects the honesty and care I believed you were capable of. There's something deeper I need to acknowledge, because pretending it isn't there would be dishonest. Over time, I came to understand that what you've been trying to break free from with Jeff isn't just a relationship. It's a trauma bond, a cycle built on emotional extremes, on hoping someone will return to who they once were, on chasing moments of closeness after long stretches of hurt. I saw that clearly, and I genuinely believed that showing you consistency, patience, and care, without name-calling, without intimidation, without abuse, might help you experience what a healthy relationship actually feels like. What I didn't fully realize at first is that in trying to help you break that cycle, I was slowly becoming part of one myself. I stayed because I believed in you. I stayed because I hoped love, stability, and safety could be enough to interrupt patterns that had harmed you for years. And somewhere along the way, the highs, the closeness, the promises, the moments when it felt like we were finally aligned, started to matter more to me than the lows that kept repeating. I can own my part in that. I don't say this to blame you, but to be honest about what's happening inside me. When the promise you made was broken, when I was cut off as though I never mattered, it forced me to confront something I can't ignore anymore. If you've decided to stay away, to detach without explanation or care, then the only way for me to remain healthy is to break my own attachment, even though it hurts. Not as punishment, not out of anger, but because continuing to hold on in silence would only deepen a cycle neither of us truly wants. Breaking a trauma bond doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like stepping back instead of chasing, like choosing clarity over hope, like letting go even when love is still there. Perhaps this is the big picture. I was telling you the truth that a force was compelling me to help you, but I didn't know how or what my purpose was. Maybe it was for me to recognize our own trauma bond and to demonstrate to you the proper way to break the cycle so that I can find peace and happiness again. I also need to speak to something else that's been weighing on me. It feels like there may be other people in your life offering support right now. And I'm struggling to reconcile how deeply I believed I mattered with how easily I was set aside. I'm not saying this to accuse you. I'm saying it because I need to know that if you ever came back, it would be because you genuinely chose me, not because your situation changed or someone else stopped showing up. That brings me to the questions I need answered, clearly and honestly. Did you truly love me in a real, emotional, romantic way? Or were the things you said based on what I was doing for you? When you promised not to repeat old patterns, and that you were choosing me, was that the truth? And most importantly, are you trying to work this out, or are you choosing to end the relationship? If you need time to think, tell me that. If you're unsure, tell me that. If you've decided to walk away, tell me that. What I can't keep accepting is silence or half-truths. I still love you. That hasn't disappeared. But love doesn't mean tolerating confusion, broken promises, or feeling disposable. I can't continue offering emotional or financial support without honesty, accountability, and a real intention to move forward differently than before. I've asked myself repeatedly whether writing this letter is the right thing to do, or if walking away quietly would have been a mistake. I still don't know. I just know that continuing to give more of myself without clarity would change who I am, and I don't want to lose the parts of me that still have self-respect. Everything I ever said to you, I meant. That's why this hurts the way it does. And that's also why I can't keep holding up this relationship alone. If I mattered to you the way you once said I did, you'll understand why I couldn't keep chasing without losing myself. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe stepping back instead of fighting for us is a mistake, but I had to choose integrity over desperation. Love isn't supposed to feel like guessing. Commitment isn't supposed to vanish without explanation. I never thought the hardest part would be realizing that walking away with care says more than staying without it. No matter what you decide, and no matter how you remember me, I truly hope you have a peaceful and Merry Christmas. I hope you're safe, clear-minded, and surrounded by people who genuinely care for you. If you choose to respond, please respond honestly. If you don't, I'll accept that and move forward quietly, even if it takes time. But before I go, I want to leave you with one question to sit with. When you look back on this a year from now, will you feel proud of how you handled this? Or will it feel like something you left unresolved with someone who never gave up on you, even when he had every reason to walk away from you? And he never gave you one reason to ever walk away from him, being loyal and committed only to you? Jimmie.
The debriefing.
Ashlynn, I don't run with cowards, and I'm done pretending this wasn't exactly that. What you did wasn't complicated, it wasn't confusing, it wasn't some tragic misunderstanding. It was cowardice. You didn't have the courage to look me in the eye and tell me why you walked away. You didn't have the spine to own the decision you made, so you vanished, blocked, avoided, and let silence do the talking, because silence doesn't ask follow-up questions. That's the move of someone who knows the truth. Wouldn't hold up if they said it out loud. And let's be clear, Eric doesn't get a pass either. A man who lets a woman end things like that, who hides behind her silence, who benefits from the avoidance, and never steps forward to say a word. That's not a man stepping up. That's another coward standing in the shadows, hoping nobody notices. Two people, same behavior, different roles, equal lack of backbone. I stood where I said I would stand. I didn't lie. I didn't cheat. I didn't disappear. I didn't need cover. You did. Cowards avoid conversations. Cowards rewrite history in their head. Cowards convince themselves that blocking someone is the same thing as being brave. It isn't. Silence wasn't kindness. It was self-protection from accountability. And I'm not angry about it anymore, because anger is for people who still need answers. I don't. I see it clearly now. I don't chase people who fold under the weight of their own decisions. I don't respect people who let others do their dirty work. And I don't pause my life waiting for courage that never shows up. You chose the easy way out. Eric stood by and let it happen. That tells me exactly who you both are. I'm moving forward, not confused, not bitter, not broken. I'm moving forward with my word intact, my name intact, and my spine straight. I build, I finish what I start. I say things to people's faces. That's the difference. I don't run with cowards. I don't explain myself to cowards. And I don't look back when cowards disappear. This isn't revenge. This is separation. And I'm already gone.
We built this from the dirt. We built this from the dirt. Straight crooked productions put the name up in the sky. We've been crafting songs of visual